Alright, let's dive into a really strange one today. The Maryland Goatman. It's this wild, spooky story about a local monster that's been freaking people out for decades. But what we're really going to do is dissect this urban legend and figure out why on earth we just can't seem to let it go. So picture this. You're on a dark, winding road just outside of Bowie, Maryland. It's called Fletchertown Road. This is where every good monster story starts, right? In a place where the shadows seem just a little too deep. This road, this is ground zero for the Goatman. For generations, kids and locals have dared each other to drive down this road, asking that same killing question. You know, you hear a branch snap. Was that just the wind, or was it something else? That single question is the entire reason the Goatman phenomenon even exists. So what exactly are we talking about here? What is the Goatman? Well, according to the legend, it's this terrifying creature, part man, part goat. And it's been blamed for all sorts of strange stuff, but especially for the deaths of local animals, specifically dogs. Okay, and here's where it gets interesting right from the jump. The story is, well, it's a mess. Nobody can even agree on what the Goatman looks like. Is it some big, hairy ape-like thing? Or is it more like a creature from old Greek myths, like a satyr? This is our first huge clue, really. The fact that the descriptions are all over the place tells you we're probably dealing with something more complicated than just some monster running around. Now, every monster needs a good backstory, but the Goatman? He's got two completely different ones. And this is where the legend gets really tangled, and you can start to see how these stories actually get built over time. So you've got two flavors of the Goatman origin story. On one side, you have the classic mad scientist tale. The story goes that a guy named Dr. Stephen Fletcher was doing some kind of goat experiment at a nearby research center. And it went horribly wrong and turned him into this monster. But then there's another, much simpler story, that he was just a creepy old hermit who lived out in the woods. These two totally different stories show you just how flexible urban legends are. They just grab bits and pieces from whatever sounds good. Okay, but what about the actual evidence? Stories are fun, but is there anything real to back any of this up? Let's try to pull apart the facts from the folklore. This timeline really shows you how a legend gets born. The supposed reason for the legend, these mysterious dog deaths, that goes way back to the 1930s. But nobody was talking about a Goatman. That character doesn't even show up until 1971. First, it's in a university student's project, and then, bam, it hits a local newspaper. And that's what really lit the fuse and sent the story everywhere. This right here? This is the supposed proof. This is the one thing people could actually point to. A bunch of dogs were found dead near the woods. And, you know, when a community is looking for answers to something tragic and weird, a mysterious monster can feel like a pretty good explanation. But here's the thing. When you look at the actual evidence, it all pointed to the dogs being killed by passing trains, which is, of course, really sad, but it's also pretty common. The problem is, a train isn't a story. A monster is a great story. So if there's no proof, how did this story manage to survive all these years? Well, it wasn't about evidence, it was about people. It became this local thing, you know? Teenagers would dare each other to go out to Fletchertown Road. They'd spray paint "Goatman was here" to prove they were brave. The story was kept alive because people were actively participating in it. And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Why do these stories stick around, even when there's nothing to them? To really get it, we need to look at this whole thing like a folklorist would. And lucky for us, a University of Maryland folklorist named Barry Pearson has studied the Goatman legends specifically. See, his goal wasn't to find some monster. It was to understand the human need for a monster in the first place. Pearson basically breaks it down into a 4-step recipe for making a myth. First, something real and upsetting happens. Second, people connect that event to some vague, old, scary story that's already floating around. Third, as he puts it, bored teenagers grab onto it and become the ones who spread it like wildfire. And finally, the whole thing becomes this cautionary tale for places like lovers' lanes, and suddenly it's a part of the local culture. Now, you might be thinking the Goatman is some weird, one-of-a-kind Maryland thing. But it turns out he's got relatives all over the country. I mean, just look at this. In Kentucky, you've got the Pope Lick Monster, this goat sheep man that supposedly lives under a train trestle. And down in Texas, they have the Lake Worth Monster, which they literally call the Texas Goatman. So this whole goat-human hybrid thing, it's not a coincidence. It's an idea that just taps into some deep, old fear that seems to resonate with people everywhere. And that really brings us to the biggest takeaway here. Running around the woods with a camera trying to find the Goatman, you're kind of missing the point. The power of this story has nothing to do with whether it's real or not. These kinds of legends, they serve a real purpose in a community. They give us a simple story for things that are random and tragic. They act as a warning, don't go into the woods at night. But maybe the biggest thing they do is give a community its own special story. Something that binds people together and gives them a unique local identity. So I'll leave you with this question. We live in an age of science and data where you can light up any shadow with the phone in your pocket. So why do we still tell each other stories about monsters in the woods? And what does the fact that we need them say about us?
Like and subscribe to learn more about mysteries of the past. Share now.